we're going to remove the transmission, clutch, bell housing, and a few other accessories and replace most of it with new parts on the TR3650 transmission. Stay tuned to figure out why exactly I replaced the bell housing. It's fun. Now the reason I'm doing all of this is because the clutch keeps slipping out of gear and it just feels pretty worn out. This video is very involved, so I'm going to try my very best to show you my step-by-step process that I took, and I'll show you all my mistakes as well, so hopefully you won't make them. New clutch fork, new clutch cable, remain seal, clutch release bearing, pilot bearing, a new clutch pivot stud, new clutch assembly, long extension, pilot bearing puller, transmission fluid, some grease, brake cleaner, plastic panel remover, RTB, medium thread locker, ratchet strap so I can take out the transmission safely. Now we need to remove the negative battery terminal. Let's remove that. Time to move these exhaust bolts. Hey, I am in the process of changing my clutch. Alright, so it's the next day, and all I've done so far is get the exhaust out. So I took a break last night because I kept getting stuck on the bolt on the starter. I took out the two bolts, and there's one bolt on top that is pretty hard to get, and if you have one of these new Edge Mustangs and you went through this process, you know that that one bolt on top of the starter is a pain in the butt to get. I was using one swivel, going from in front of the K-member and going through to get behind the K-member to get to the bolt. With the one swivel, but I just got another swivel, so I'm gonna see if I can finally get it out. On top of that, I got some decently bad news last night. My grandma's not doing so well, so emotionally I'm not very positive and happy, but I'm gonna keep pushing through because I want this transmission out. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you the starter and what I've basically been trying to do. I'm gonna try to show you what I've been trying to do. So that is the starter right there, and I got the bolt. I got the top bolt. So the top bolt is there, and there's one way on top next to the engine. So I've been going through this K-member to get to the bolt on top with that extension right there. This is what I'll be using with this long ass extension. So let's see if I can get on there. If you see that extension right there, it's going all the way up to the starter, all the way over here. Some kind of setup. So you had, I'll give you some room. Then yeah,
it's coming off.
I feel a little gap. It's finally out. So now I'm going to remove those. Before I take off that last drive shaft bolt, I'm going to go ahead and empty the transmission fluid. So let's go ahead and do that. Time to move that. There's 2 bolts on the bottom, 3 bolts on the left side, 2 bolts on the right side, and 2 bolts on top. So I'm gonna go ahead and start taking those out. I'm trying to show you as much as I can without it being, you know, completely impossible to record and do this job. Hey, I just got that hard to get bolt on top driver's side. Now it's time to get the top 2 bolts on top of the transmission. There's 2 ways to do this. Go from the engine bay or lower the transmission and use a long extension, which I'm going to use that method because I don't have the proper wrench to go from the top of the engine bay, because you need a long wrench, and I just can't get one I have on top of the bolt, and it's just a pain in the butt. So I'm gonna lower it and see if I can get it like that. So let's do it. Oh, and I already moved the wiring harness, as you can see. It's dangling. Got that bolt off. Now I'm gonna go to the other side. All right, so I just got the 2 bolts out. What you need to do, lower the transmission with the 2 bolts still on, then snake a long extension on above the transmission. Then hit those bolts. I recommend wearing like a headlamp. I was just wearing one to see where the bolts are, because you can if you look over the transmission. Then get it on the bolt and get it along a breaker bar and break it loose. It is very tough to break loose the top bolts. Now I'm going to use some type of pry bar, most likely a flathead wrench, and pry the transmission off of the engine and slowly move the jack back and get the transmission out of there. So the next step, let's get to it. With Tara's help, we finally got the clutch out. I was using pry bar while she was lowering the jack. Now I need to start disassembling the clutch, and putting in new parts. I'm gonna replace this one, the clutch fork, and the pivot joint right there. There's the clutch. And it is so rusty. Let's get to disassembling that. One down. A lot heavier than you might think. All of that came from the clutch. All that rusty, nasty shit. So I just took this off thinking I was recording, but I wasn't recording. So to take this off, it was on like this. Like that. You want to push this fork downwards by wiggling it. You can grab on the outside of it if you need to, then pull out, and it pulls out just like that. It's decently easy. So sorry about that. Now we have a new one. But before we do that, we need to remove the clutch pivot stud. And I think that takes a 23. Just hit my hand. So here's the old one. You can tell there's a lot of grooves on it, and here's a new one. Buck. Last that you saw, I literally broke the bolt in my transmission. Stupid mistake. it was late and I was just getting kind of frustrated and I wanted to get it all done. To drill it out even more and use a heater coil and put in the old stud. The new stud should not have broken out. It should have been an exact replacement and it was one of the more expensive ones to replace with. So that's very disappointing. Once again, it was my mistake because I was being stupid and I felt it get tough and I just kept going. Why is it so dark? So we learned and this is how it is. Day 3 on working on the clutch. So let's just get it done. All right, so new update. I was trying to drill out the bolt and the drill bit literally broke within the bolt for the pilot hole. So I'm unable to drill any more of it. So this is when you kind of let go of your ego and you take it to a professional. So I'm going to take it to a machine shop and hopefully they will be able to either take it all out and rethread it or just weld this piece onto it. So hopefully, I'm hoping that they were just welded on because I doubt they will be able to rethread that because it's so shot. Let me show you what's going on. And finally, the pilot hole broke in the middle. So then I'm thinking maybe I'll just get some threads on and just keep drilling. And I just kept messing up even more. So obviously this is not my area of expertise. However, I do like to try to do things myself and learn and, you know, make mistakes. Except when you make that big mistake, it's a pain in the butt. I just got back from the machine shop and there's no way that they can either drill it out or weld it. So what I'm gonna have to do is buy a whole new bell housing for the transmission. I have to wait for that part to get in. That'll take about a week and a half to get here. I work a full-time job during the week and I took today off, Monday, because I was hoping to get this all done today, but I couldn't. I'm a little bummed because I had a lot more hiccups than I expected, but it's all what you make of it. You can be down and sad, which is easier to do because you know, a lot of things are happening to me at this very moment, emotionally wise and family wise. You just have to try your best to keep the head up high. Keep the head up high and keep going strong, and yeah. So at this point, the bell housing came in. Finally, we get to finish the job. It's not new, but it's another housing with the clutch pivot stud still in there. If you're also doing this job, go ahead and check out new Edge Mustang parts on eBay. They have a whole bunch of parts. I was looking through the stock and it's pretty solid. So first we need a 13mm socket to take out these bolts on the housing. Let's go ahead and get that started. Luckily they're all the same length, so that's good. You have to remove these detent screws right here, which is basically 3 of these with a spring and whatever that is. So if you're doing this yourself, that's what you have to do. And if you end up dropping on the shaft, you can ultimately mess up a lot of this stuff in the inside of the transmission. So be careful. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take off all the gaskets here with probably a sponge or something like that and put new RTP gasket because that's what they used last time. Hand tighten the bolts, wait an hour, then tighten all the way. Alright, so now while we wait for the RTB to dry out for about an hour, we are going to go ahead and take out that bearing that's attached to the flywheel and install a new one. I took it out last week in different clips, so I'll just play that now. So the inside came out. Now I gotta get the outside. Finally got it. Woo. Just so you know, when you're doing this, there are grooves. I didn't know this because the video I watched to do this did not tell me, but there are grooves within this pilot bearing that you can get your pilot bearing puller on. So that's that. And now I'm going to go ahead and install the new one. So let's do that. Okay, I just cleaned that hole out. Grab your new bearing and a socket that'll fit on the outside edge of the bearing. Going in nicely. Just keep going. That should be bottom out. That's good. Now, we are going to install the clutch. The old one was literally dripping with dust when I took it out. So just finished installing that new clutch. Wasn't all that hard, just the pressure plate is decently heavy. So the specified torque is about 18 to 28 pounds, odd range, but I'm just gonna go with 24 pounds. Sounds safe. Just put in the clutch fork, make sure everything's lubed up properly, but that's all I'm doing today. I'll be back another day to put in the transmission back in the car because the clutch is ready to go. Everything's ready to go. It just needs to be all put back together. So I'm pretty excited to finally be this close to being finished, but that's not including how hard it's going to be to put in that transmission because the bolts are pretty difficult to get to. The starter bolts are pretty difficult to get to. I'm not installing the top, so it's gonna be a bit easier, and the exhaust is a pain in the butt as well. So, just got the transmission back in. Now I just need to put in the bolts. The transmission was lining up, but only a little bit of this shaft is going in. So my issue was that I had a bolt still in there holding in the cover plate or whatever you call that for the transmission, and I forgot to put that in there. So I'm trying to put in the transmission and the bolt kept blocking it, and I got stuck on that for like, I don't know, 20 minutes. So finally figured that out, and I took it out. Luckily it wasn't a major issue, and the transmission kind of lined back up and went in a lot easier. Obviously it could do it without the bolt blocking its way. Now I just need to put in the bolts, torque them to spec, put in the starter, drive shaft, and exhaust, and then put in the transmission oil, then the shifter, and I'm good to go. So almost there. Alright, so I know I'm looking a bit crazy, but I'm not recording it all now because I'm just getting it done, putting it all back together. I just got the transmission all the way in. I torqued down the bolts besides the top two bolts, got the starter in, and I just put in the two side bolts. If you remember me talking about the starter, and I talked to a whole bunch of other Mustang people and they said that they left it off as well. So I'm just going to do the same, makes my life 1,000 times easier. Now, I just unbolted the clutch cable because I'm putting in a new clutch cable. Now I'm gonna put in a new one. So that's what we're doing now. So, out with the old and in with the new. I'm not gonna lie, by this time it has been about 2 months since I did this job. There were quite a few more issues than I expected. I was expecting it to be flawless when I installed everything, but the second gear, even after I installed everything, kept popping out of gear and the exhaust had an exhaust leak. I fixed the exhaust leak and I started troubleshooting the issue with the second gear. And at first I thought it was the synchronizer, but the second gear wasn't grinding, and which happens when the synchronizer goes out. Instead, it was just popping out of place, almost like there was too much pressure, which led me to the conclusion that there was too much pressure in the transmission, which also means I put too much transmission fluid in it. And that was the problem. Too much fluid gave it too much pressure, therefore making the second gear pop out of place. With all those issues resolved, the car drove fantastic. Keep in mind, I have been driving the car for a while since I changed the clutch. Guys, thank you for taking the time and watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like it, subscribe, and watch something else of mine. This is Chris AutoMotivate. Always appreciate one another. I'll see you next time.